At the end of last year, I went to Japan for the first time, visiting Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, Hiroshima, Uji, and Nara. I saw a lot, ate a lot, and did a ton of traveling around in my 3-week stay. Now, I've rounded up my 60 favorite things that I recommend to anyone on their inaugural visit to Japan. So, let's get started. For me, nothing in Japan inspires a greater feeling of wonder than Shibuya Crossing. I highly recommend viewing it at day and night from the top of the Shibuya Building. But walking across it is the thing you'll remember more than anything else. It's surreal to see hundreds, and in many cases thousands of people all using it to get to their next destination, with skyscrapers and their multicolored billboards and screens towering over you. Visiting Hiroshima's atomic bomb dome and Peace Memorial Park isn't easy. Seeing the dome and trying to imagine the indescribable level of destruction that was caused to the rest of the city will make you incredibly sad, as will seeing memorials in the Peace Park that honour everyone that died as a result of the blast and its after effects. Inside the park is the Peace Memorial Museum that's filled with powerful exhibits that will teach you more about the events of August 6, 1945, as well as Hiroshima before and after the bombing. The more I learned about the city, the more I saw it as a symbol of hope, that no matter how hard things get, there's always a way to rebuild. Visiting Hiroshima gave me a far deeper understanding of one of the most significant events in human history. It's something I recommend everyone experience. Visit the restaurant chain Afuri for delicious ramen. I recommend their signature yuzu style ramen that has a wonderful citrus taste in the broth. Universal Studios Japan opened back in 2001 and remains the most visited theme park in Asia. A lot of the attractions in the park are similar to what you'll find in the US, like Harry Potter and Jurassic World, but there are a few notable exceptions, like the adorable Peanuts area with a lot of attractions centered around Snoopy, Charlie Brown, and the rest of the gang. But of course, Universal Studios Japan's standout attraction is Super Nintendo World, that's an absolute love letter to anyone that's played a Mario game. The area isn't huge, but is immensely detailed. You don't need to be a die-hard fan to see the love and care that's gone into making it. There are games to play, although you'll need to buy a £20 wristband to do so, along with photo opportunities with the likes of Mario, Luigi, and Toad. There are 2 rides to enjoy. The first is Yoshi's Adventure, where you'll meet a bunch of characters from the Mushroom Kingdom and get a pretty spectacular aerial view of the park as you leisurely make your way around a track while sitting in a Yoshi. The second is Mario Kart Koopa's Challenge, where you speed around various tracks from the game series while firing shells at other racers that are displayed through an augmented reality visor you wear. I think this ride's greatest achievement is making the queue a somewhat entertaining experience, with tons of references to Mario games throughout, like a bunch of trophies from the Mario Kart series displayed during one section. As you'd expect, there are stacks of Nintendo merch for sale, much of which is exclusive to the park. I dropped over £100 in the main store and I regret nothing. Finally, there's a Toad Cafe that serves themed food, with my favourite being the Princess Peach Cake that's an ode to Mario 64. Just bear in mind that, while it's very entertaining, the food here won't blow you away in terms of taste, and it is expensive for Japanese standards. Dotonbori is my favourite place in Osaka. Whether you're visiting at day or night, its eccentric signs, range of restaurants, and attractions give it a carnival-like feeling that reminds me of being a kid. The area is most famous for its Glycoman sign that's been around in various forms since 1935. You'll definitely see an army of people replicating his iconic pose. If you've ever searched for images of Mount Fuji, chances are you've seen an incredible view with a pagoda and cherry blossoms in the foreground, and a snow-covered Fuji in the background. That view is from Arakurayama Sengen Park, and while we didn't have the best weather on our visit, it was still incredible to see in person. Orizuru Tower offers a stunning view of Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park and the rest of the city, with landmarks like Hiroshima Castle and Itsukushima Island visible on clear days. The name Orizuru means paper crane, which has been a symbol of hope and peace since the bombing. The tower opened in 2016 and has this magnificent open-air observation deck that we experienced during a golden sunset. Downstairs, there's exhibits telling you more about Hiroshima's history. And you can also fold your own Orizuru, make a wish, and watch it float to the very bottom of the 50-meter tall tower. Akihabara is the center of all things video games, anime, manga, and general electronics in Tokyo. So, if you're even remotely into any of those things, it's an essential visit. My biggest piece of advice is to walk into as many stores as you can and see what's on offer. One of the stores we went into had mountains of Pokemon cards sealed up, with some of the rarest ones going for thousands of pounds that instantly took me back to my childhood. The arcades are also a must, as they're levels beyond anything I've ever experienced before. We went to a Geigo one that had about 8 floors that were packed with teenagers and adults, relaxing after a long day at work with some retro classics, music rhythm games, and everything in between. One of the most famous retro game shops in Akihabara is Super Potato, that has a couple floors filled with consoles and games for sale that, if you're anything like me, will kick your nostalgia into overdrive. Retro game prices in Japan, especially at some of the most famous stores like this, have skyrocketed in recent years, but everything here is still cheaper than what you get in the West, and, more importantly, the condition of everything is immaculate. If you're staying in Tokyo, I highly recommend taking a day to visit a town called Fujikawaguchiko that offers exceptional views of Japan's famous stratovolcano. The town offers a couple awesome ways to see Mount Fuji. The first is by going up a smaller mountain, Mount Tenjo, via cable car. This will take you higher than 1,100 meters above sea level and offers stunning views of Lake Kawaguchi, one of the so-called 5 lakes of Mount Fuji that were formed from previous eruptions. In addition to the views of the lake, the town, and surrounding mountains, you of course get an incredible view of Mount Fuji, assuming it's not a cloudy day of course. At the top there's places to get food, souvenir shops, and you can even swing while gazing over at Japan's tallest mountain. Boat trips are the second pretty cool way to see Fuji from the town, and there's a bunch of options to choose from, whether that's a pedalo, speedboat, or a more casual sightseeing boat. We opted for the latter, that was very chilled and took us on a 30-minute or so ride across the river. Again, for us, Fuji was covered in cloud, but I hope you get better weather if you visit. A 10-minute ferry ride from Hiroshima will take you to an island called Itsukushima that's home to a couple thousand people and is famous for its giant red torii gate that looks like it's floating on water when the tide is in. The shrine is said to have been there since the year 1168 and is truly stunning to see in person. Itsukushima also has wild deer roaming around, similar to the city of Nara. There's a shopping street a short walk from the ferry terminal where you can get some tasty food and explore some pretty unique shops, like this one selling various kinds of soy sauce. The Shinkansen, or bullet train, is the epitome of Japanese convenience that everyone needs to experience. The model you're seeing here is an N700 series that's been in service since 2007 and operates at a maximum speed of 185 miles per hour. There are Shinkansen lines up and down Japan that you can take across the country in rapid time. And they're not even something you need to book in advance. You can literally turn up at a station, go to the ticket machine, and pick yourself up a ticket for a train coming in the next 10 minutes. Once you're on board, you'll notice how quiet everything is. Fellow passengers in particular will always go out of their way to make sure they're not disturbing others. Shibuya Sky is the newest of the 3 main observation decks in Tokyo, and in my opinion is the best. That's mainly because you're able to see parts of the city without glass in your way, which you have with Tokyo Tower and Tokyo Skytree. Shibuya Sky gives you the entire roof of the Shibuya Scramble Square building to roam around on, which stands at 229 meters high. As you can see, the views are gorgeous and you can easily spot some of the biggest landmarks in the city. And, if the weather is super clear, you can even see Mount Fuji off in the distance. Jojoen is a Japanese restaurant chain on the more luxury end, famous for its huge selection of Wagyu beef that you cook yourself on a barbecue griller on your table. The food itself is a huge part of what makes Jojoen great, but so do the locations of the restaurants and the service you get. We went to the one in Kyoto Station that provides a spectacular view of Kyoto Tower. In addition, the waiters and waitresses are on top of their game all the time, which dramatically improves the overall experience. Now, this was some of the best beef I've ever had, period. We ordered various steaks and the likes of beef tongue, and it was all delicious. Truly melt in your mouth kind of stuff. The Fujiko Fujio Museum is a great place to visit if you want to learn more about the history of Japanese manga, specifically the works of an artist called Hiroshi Fujimoto, who went by the pen name Fujiko Fujio. The museum takes you through the works of Fujimoto, much of which focuses on his creation of Doraemon, a manga series that's also spawned multiple TV series, films, games, and soundtrack albums. Fujimoto's work is most famous for conjuring up a sense of wonder in the reader, and Doraemon's no exception. He's a blue robot cat from the 22nd century that's got a ton of futuristic gadgets at his disposal, which naturally includes a time machine. There's a bunch of super interesting exhibits in the museum, as well as an open outdoor area filled with models of Fujimoto's most famous characters that make for great photo ops. The museum wouldn't be complete without a cafe with food themed around Fujimoto's works. Naturally, they serve dorayaki, a Japanese treat Doraemon famously loves. They're essentially 2 pancakes sandwiched together with red bean paste in the middle, and they're absolutely delicious. I also went for a Doraemon-themed cream soda, and Grace and I shared a Doraemon curry. If you're a James Bond fan, you have to visit the Hotel New Otani in Tokyo. It featured as one of the criminal headquarters in Sean Connery's 1967 Bond, You Only Live Twice. As someone who's watched the film countless times throughout their life, seeing the building in person was pretty spectacular. Oh, and the hotel has incredible gardens too, which also featured in the film. Tokyo Skytree is the tallest structure in Tokyo, and the whole of Japan for that matter. It's also the tallest tower in the world, standing at 2,080 feet. Naturally then, you get views from the tower you can't get anywhere else, and they're absolutely stunning. Being up that high really shows you just how big and dense Tokyo is. You can spot landmarks across the city from the Skytree, and you'll have an absolute field day if you've got a camera with a decent zoom lens. We went during a relatively clear day, and I imagine it's similarly beautiful at night. While the Skytree is the tallest structure in the country, Tokyo Tower is the most iconic. It's clear the design of Tokyo Tower is based off France's Eiffel Tower, but it's actually 9 meters taller and lighter by over 3,000 tons. My favourite fact about Tokyo Tower that I'll pass on here is that it's repainted in its iconic combination of white and international orange every 5 years, and it takes 28,000 litres of paint to do so. There's 2 decks that take you as high as 819 feet and provide great views of the city. We went on Halloween last year and there was an appropriately themed light show going on, which was extra cool. There's a few unique things to see on the first deck, like a shrine dedicated to the tower. While it's not the tallest, and taking decent photos is extremely difficult due to the reflections from the glass, I still really recommend going up Tokyo Tower. Finally seeing it in person was truly spectacular, particularly when it's lit up in its beautiful orange colour at night. The Fushimi Inari Taisha is one of Japan's most famous shrines, renowned for its roughly 10,000 bright orange torii gates. This is one of the most popular tourist spots in Kyoto, so be prepared for absolutely huge crowds. Oh, and if you're after a picture of the torii gates looking empty, don't even bother trying to do this when you arrive. The shrine sits at the base of a mountain, Mount Inari, which takes a good hour and a half to climb up. The higher you get, the fewer people there will be, and you'll be able to get some incredible photos. About midway up the steep hike is an amazing view of Kyoto. At the top, you can pray to Inari, the god of rice, success, and all-around prosperity. Finally, at the bottom, there's a ton of food stands that serve as your reward for a good 3-hour or so hike. Right outside Harajuku Station in Tokyo is a restaurant called Gonpachi Nori-Temaki that specializes in temaki, a longer, thinner type of sushi. There's plenty of fish options here as you'd expect. There's also a variety of other meats like beef and chicken. We tried a plethora of options on the menu that were all extremely appetizing. The best part about this restaurant for me is you get to see everything you've ordered made fresh in front of you by the staff, who were all super welcoming and jovial. I mentioned it earlier, but you really need to try dorayaki when you're in Japan. They're available at pretty much any convenience store, so you really have no excuse. Tsūtenkaku Tower is another landmark in Osaka that's truly worth a visit. For starters, it has a 60-meter long slide that whisks you from the tower's 3rd floor down to the basement in just 10 seconds. It would be rude not to for only £5, right? Of course, you can go up the tower for marvellous views of Osaka and many of its biggest landmarks. My favourite part is that you can go outside to the very top where there's a viewing platform with a glass floor you can stand on that, admittedly, got my palms a bit sweaty. Nara is located to the east of Osaka and south of Kyoto. You can get to Nara from either city in less than an hour, and when you do, you'll need to visit the Tōdai-ji Temple that's absolutely remarkable to see in person, both because of its sheer size and beautiful grounds. The temple has been around since the year 752 and is home to the largest bronze statue of the Buddha Vairakana that weighs 500 tons. There's many other wonderful details in the temple, and while we were there, you could donate money to have your name on a rooftop tile used for renovation. Oh, and we also saw a group of students trying to squeeze through one of the temple's pillars. It's said that doing so grants you good health and protection from bad luck. Having great udon is essential when you're in Japan. For that, I highly recommend a restaurant chain called Tsuru Ton Tan. They do absolutely giant bowls that will easily fill you up. In addition, they do a pretty great shaved ice dessert too. Shinjuku is a huge administrative and commercial ward in Tokyo. It's home to the Tokyo Metropolitan Government HQ, as well as many iconic Japanese companies like Subaru. For tourists, there's myriad shops, bars, restaurants, and clubs to enjoy. I definitely recommend wandering around at night, particularly to experience all the incredible signs and lights, with my favourite being the iconic red Kabukicho gate. The area of Shinsekai was constructed in the early 1900s as an entertainment area, with an amusement park at its centre. Over 100 years later, Shinsekai still feels like an amusement park, with its huge eccentric signs and gaming parlours for shogi, mahjong, and pachinko. There's also an unexpectedly high number of places to do archery. Naturally, there's plenty of great places to eat and drink, too. I can't overstate how essential it is for you to explore convenience stores in Japan. The main three are 7-Eleven, Family Mart, and Lawson. Each has an absolute treasure trove of delicious food. from sandwiches to full-on meals you can microwave and eat in a dedicated seating area, which many of these stores have. Coming from the UK, I had to get over the mental hurdle of convenience store food actually being rather delicious, but once I did, I was hooked, particularly on the fried chicken section. Oh, and a big shout out to Japan's many varieties of bottled drinks. Trying different ones was also an addiction of mine during my stay. Osaka Castle is remarkable to see in person. The traditional Japanese design is striking and covered in beautiful details. The main keep sits at the center of the 15 acres of castle grounds, and I really encourage you to go inside and explore the various exhibits that teach you lots about the castle. In particular, the significant role it played in the reunification of Japan in the 16th century. You can also climb to the top and admire the sprawling castle grounds from above. Other things to keep you entertained include dressing up as a samurai and exploring the gift shop with some pretty unique items, like these bottle covers. I highly recommend visiting a Japanese sweet shop in Kyoto called Kagizen Yoshifusa that sells a variety of confections and has a sit-down area out back with some great treats too. We went for a couple traditional options called kuzukiri and warabi mochi that were both tasty and incredibly filling. And here's a quick look at some of the many sweets for sale. There's over 1,200 deer roaming around Nara Park, which you can feed with crackers sold at various stalls. Just make sure to buy crackers in an area where there aren't too many deer to avoid getting immediately surrounded. The current yen exchange rate, combined with the tax-free shopping available to non-residents, means picking up a lot of stuff in Japan will probably be cheaper than where you live. So if there's something you've had your eye on, there's basically no excuse not to buy it. The Kiyomizu-dera Temple keeps a watchful eye on Kyoto from the foothills of the city's eastern mountains. The temple is immediately recognizable for its beautiful 3-story orange pagoda, along with its terrace that sits around 30 meters above ground, where you get a commanding view of the city. Yuji, located to the south of Kyoto, is most famous for its production of matcha, a form of green tea. Now, I'm no matcha expert, but my partner Grace drinks it religiously and thought a store called Hori Sishimeien and Nakamura Tokichi Honten sold the best varieties. The latter also has a cafe where you can enjoy matcha, light snacks, and desserts. We tried all three and they were extremely tasty. I love the Umeda Sky Building because it gives you an extraordinary open-air view of Osaka. The building's design is also pretty unique, with it essentially being two 40-story towers connected at their two uppermost floors. Because of this, you get to go on what is essentially a floating escalator that takes you from one side of the building to another as you go up to the observatory. I highly recommend going up at night and seeing the entire city lit up. The Kinkaku-ji Temple is pretty phenomenal to see in person. The top 2 floors of the pavilion are covered in gold leaf, which is gold that's been hammered into a thin sheet. The temple's history dates back as far as 1397, but what's there now is a reconstruction that's been there since 1955. The Sensō-ji Temple is considered to be Tokyo's oldest temple, and is another architectural masterclass. In particular, I spent a lot of time admiring its huge lanterns that have beautiful designs and weigh up to 700 kilograms. It's definitely worth exploring the street line with shops that leads to the main temple grounds, called the Nakamise-dori, for snacks and souvenirs. Kyoto Tower stands out in the skyline of a city dominated by smaller, more traditional buildings. Because of this, you get a wonderful view of the city's various landmarks and, on a clear day, can even see Osaka 27 or so miles in the distance. Trying Japanese curry during your visit is an absolute must. It's delicious and usually extremely cheap too. Before my trip to Japan, I never thought I'd be recommending a station as a top place to visit, but Kyoto Station surprised me with how much there is to see and do in it. First off, there's a giant staircase with around 15,000 LEDs that put on a show for you. Next up is a skyway where you can look down at the humongous station below, as well as landmarks like Kyoto Tower. But my favourite has to be the Sky Garden. There's a pretty nice place to relax after a long day of sightseeing, and it also provides its own great views of Kyoto Tower and the rest of the city. And it doesn't stop there either. There's a display outside the station where water illuminated by multicolored lights dances to various music. What could easily be mistaken for just another extravagant sign in Dotonbori is actually a super fun ride. The Don Quixote or Ebisu Tower Ferris wheel is pill-shaped rather than circular and takes you 77 meters high, where you'll be able to see a few of the city's biggest landmarks, like the Tsūtenkaku Tower. It takes 15 minutes to go around and only costs £3 or so for a ticket. Byōdō-in Temple is not only one of Yuji's most famous tourist spots, but it's also pretty unique in that a couple parts of the temple appear on Japanese currency. First off, there's the beautiful Phoenix Hall you're seeing here that appears on the 10 yen coin. It's said to have been constructed in 1053 and is one of the few remaining examples left in Japan from that period. Sitting at the top of the Phoenix Hall are two Chinese phoenix. One of these is shown on the current 10,000 yen note, although later this year a new 10,000 yen note will be introduced in Japan, showing Tokyo Station instead. One of the most peaceful walks we did during our visit to Japan was along the Katsura River that flows through Arakurayama in the northwest of Kyoto. There's also plenty of boat trips available here as well if that's your thing. Osaka's Nambayasaka Shrine is easily one of the most unique in Japan, with its huge 39-foot lion head with its jaws wide open that are said to swallow any evil spirits inside you, leaving you with only good luck. The huge queues and numerous Michelin star signs give it away, but the restaurant Okonomiyaki Mizuno in Osaka's Dotonbori area is an essential visit. It specializes in okonomiyaki, which is a savory pancake filled with meat like pork and various types of seafood, along with vegetables and noodles, topped with delicious sauce. The dishes we had were extremely tasty and filling, and our mouths had time to salivate beforehand as we watched the chef prepping the food on our table's griddle. The Meiji Jingu Shrine is dedicated to Japan's Emperor Meiji, who ruled from 1867 to 1912, and his wife, Empress Shokan. It was completed in 1921 and is located in the middle of a beautiful 170-acre forest that has over 120,000 trees. Pablo is a hugely popular Japanese dessert shop that does a wide range of cheese tarts. They're very appetizing and Moorish too, so definitely give them a try. Hokkanji Temple, or Yasaka Pagoda, is one of Kyoto's most picturesque spots, and for good reason. It's a beautiful pagoda that towers above the traditional streets below. Just prepare yourself for a cavalcade of tourists trying to snap the perfect photo for social media. I'm not a huge fan of fish at all, and even I loved the eel rice from a restaurant called Anago Meshi Wada on Itsukushima Island in Hiroshima. You need to give this traditional, family-run restaurant a try. Pro tip, go to the Asakusa Culture Tourist Information Center if you want a magnificent view of the Sensō-ji Temple and Tokyo Skytree. At the top is an observation deck that's completely free to access. There's also lots of exhibitions inside that will give you tons of history on the area of Asakusa too. In the northwest of Kyoto is Saga Taroko Station, that's home to the Sagano Romantic Train, an older-style sightseeing locomotive that provides incredible views of the area's mountains and rivers. The line was originally part of the Kyoto Railway that opened back in 1899, before it shifted to operating for tourist purposes. The whole experience of climbing on the old train and taking in the beautiful surroundings on the railway's scenic route is very exciting. You can take the train back and forth, but I'd suggest only going one way and getting an alternate route back, like a boat downstream, as riding the train a second time does get a little tiresome. The train itself can be quite loud, and you do spend more time than I was expecting going through tunnels. The Arakurayama bamboo forest is phenomenal to see in person and has some great pathways to explore, although I just want to flag the forest is much smaller than pictures make it out to be. Flippers is a great restaurant to try Japanese souffle pancakes. They're taller, fluffier, and airier than American-style pancakes and are wonderfully tasty. You'll be riding metro systems a lot when you visit Japan, particularly in Tokyo and Osaka, and I just want to point out how gloriously simple and no fuss using it is. Everything is clean, people are always going out of their way to make sure they don't bother others, and, most importantly, everything is on time. It's all on a completely different level here. We even saw a fan exhibition on one of our trains once that was in immaculate condition. You'd never, ever see that in London. Staying hydrated in Japan is easy thanks to its abundance of vending machines. I tried tons of drinks from these things, and I recommend you do the same. In my experience, they were all wonderful. The Tokyo Imperial Palace is the official residence of the Emperor of Japan, which since 2019 has been Emperor Naruhito. The sprawling palace grounds and gardens are built on the old site of Edo Castle, which was the previous name for Tokyo. The palace's east gardens are free to explore, but everything else needs to be done as part of a tour that's free, but has limited spaces, so you do need to arrive early to secure a spot. We saw a ton of beautiful architecture, and our tour guide gave us lots of information about the grounds and its history. We even got to see some foreign officials arriving at the main reception hall, so we're treated to a display of horses, carriages, and other fancy things. Yasuka Shrine, previously called Gion Shrine, has been around since the 600s and is absolutely beautiful, particularly at night with its copious paper lanterns lit up around its stage. I know you're thinking it's probably ridiculous to have a Starbucks on a Japan top 60 list, but hear me out. We found one in Yuji that has its own beautiful Zen garden where you can relax and enjoy your drink of choice. It's easily the nicest Starbucks I've ever seen. If you love eating fish, you need to visit the Kuromon Ichiba Market in Osaka. It's got around 150 shops with pretty much every kind of fish in the ocean. That includes fugu, the fish that needs to be specially prepared so it's safe to eat. If you're not a huge fish fan, there's plenty of sweet treats for sale here too. There are shrines all over Japan, so it would be rude if you didn't get your fortune at least one of them. For around £1, you can draw an omikuji, which will display whether you're lucky or unlucky. If you're unlucky like me, it's customary to tie your fortune to areas on shrine grounds, so as not to carry the bad luck with you. You can pray at shrines too, of course. Just drop a coin into the offering box, clap twice, and make your wish. Takoyaki are balls of batter filled with diced octopus, covered in sauce and topped with dried tuna shavings. It's delicious street food you should absolutely try. Let's close things out with another beautiful temple, Kyoto's Tenryuji Temple. It was first constructed in 1345, but, just like many of Japan's historical monuments, has been rebuilt multiple times due to fires and other events. You can explore the wonderfully constructed interiors, which have a pretty cool area where you can sit on traditional tatami mats. There's also plenty of gardens to explore that, in the wonderful sunshine that we had, looked pretty incredible. And there you have it, 60 things to do on your first trip to Japan. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like as this really helps it reach more people, and subscribe for more content like this.